Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Ruger-Morawski, and I am the Associate Director of Partnerships at Parker Dewey. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity today to talk to you not only a little bit about what micro-internships are, but most of you in this room, being in this webinar, probably already know what they are. So today's focus is really going to be about how you can take the initiative to create these short-term paid professional opportunities in industries that are specifically interesting to you. So to get started, for those of you in the room, though, who may not be totally familiar yet, first I want to set the stage by highlighting that there are some challenges that we know a lot of career launchers face when they're trying to figure out that next step in their career. So on the screen, we see a few examples of those challenges. These may resonate with you. We've also got some options in the poll that I know are resonating with a lot of folks. But if you're thinking, I don't know what I want to do, I'm not sure about jumping right into a full semester or full summer commitment when I'm still trying to figure it out. If you're saying, I've got too crazy of a schedule, whether that's because you've got work commitments, family commitments, maybe you're a student athlete, if you're looking for opportunities and all you're seeing in your area is unpaid, and you're also looking at your budget and going, well, that's not going to work. Or if you're just overwhelmed by trying to figure out where to start, these can be really helpful in all those situations. So just looking at the folks in the room today, I see folks saying, like, I'm struggling to make that first step. I'm applying, whether that's traditional internships or micro internships, and I'm struggling to get selected. That may be because you're applying to what's there, but what's there maybe isn't a great fit. So today is a good webinar for you to be in today. This will be helpful. About 22% of you saying you can't afford to take something unpaid. Again, micro internships are always paid. And then there are 40% of you saying, what I'm interested in doesn't have opportunities near me. Those geographical challenges are real. So all these reasons are why we enter micro internships. And these address those challenges because, one, they are short-term and flexible. So when we say short-term, we really mean it. Most of these projects are somewhere between 10 and 40 hours in total. And they're so short because they're focused on accomplishing something specific. So there's a deliverable that you hand off to the company when you are done with a micro-internship, typically remotely. Most of these projects are remote, which again really helps with that flexibility. And for the 40% of you who said, I'm interested in things that don't have opportunities near me, especially great for y'all. So a company, we see these from all different types of industries, all different types of departments. So a company might say, I need someone to create an email marketing campaign focused on a specific demographic. They may say, I've got a bunch of data here. I don't have time to go through it. I need a micro intern to look through and see if there are any actionable insights. You might see a micro internship where someone's just looking for some social media support. Again, all different types of departments, all different types of companies, big, small, whole range. That stated, there may be some industries where maybe you want to get experience, but you're not seeing those companies use micro internships yet. Again, you're in the right place today. A reminder too that micro internships are always paid. They're always using some sort of skills that you'd be learning in a degree program, even if it's in your first or second year. Sometimes we have companies looking for micro interns to write blog posts or do research. These are things you're doing as first and second year students. So, keep looking for those opportunities or creating them yourselves with the tools we're going to review today, even if you are very early in your career. So now that we've covered what exactly a micro internship is, again, they're short-term, paid, professional, typically remote. I want to make sure you all understand the benefits. One is accessibility. We've already kind of talked about. A lot of folks are geographically kind of locked in an area, and that may not be the area where there are opportunities they're interested in. As long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, most of these are remote, so you can do micro internships. These are not simulations or hypotheticals. They're real projects that you get to add to your resume or your LinkedIn. Now, something interesting about Parker doing micro internships is, again, you could be working with a wide range of companies. You could be working with a Fortune 500, or you could be working with a local mom and pop shop. But regardless of what company you're working with, when you add this to your resume or your LinkedIn, you will list the experience as an independent contractor of Parker Dewey. We are the employer of record. We, Parker Dewey, we're the micro internship people. So we're the ones that are actually going to be paying you. We're the ones that you can come to if you're struggling with your project. And we're the ones, again, that go on your resume when you're listing the experience. Since these are project focused and typically remote, the way most micro internships run is you'll have a connection meeting with your supervisor. That is a professional at the company hosting the project. So you're expanding your network in a very real way, getting to know them, and you're going to get all those details and all the resources you need to be able to work on that project. And then after that, you're off and running. Some projects are more complex than others, which means there might be a few more check-ins along the way. But for the most part, it's wherever it fits in your schedule as long as you're meeting the deadline. So if you do great work at 3 a.m. and that's when you have time, that's when your brain is buzzing, work on the project at 3 a.m. It's a great way, again, for those of you who are trying to figure out what you want to do that in a really efficient way. It looks like it's only about 10% of you in the room today, but it's a long time to commit a whole semester or summer and maybe realize a week in, this isn't what I was hoping it would be. So test things out with micro-internships. And a lot of companies are using micro-internships as a way to create a pipeline or maybe even audition talent for specific longer-term roles. So while it's not guaranteed, there's that possibility. If you do a great job on your micro-internship, there could be a traditional internship or a full-time role waiting on the other side. And I know I already highlighted it, but highlighting again, because we know it's important. These are all paid. So as long as you are 18 or older, this is open to students or recent graduates. There's no official cutoff for recent grads. As long as you're still trying to figure out the next step in your career, this is a resource you're welcome to use. International students can and have done micro-internships, but the details vary a little bit from institution to institution. So if you're an international student, your first step is going to be to connect with international student support at your institution to figure out what their process for CPT and OPT is, because that's going to determine your eligibility. Because micro-interns are independent contractors of Parker Dewey, this is also open to undocumented students. So if you are undocumented and you've been struggling to find opportunities, this is something you can do. And some of you can even get paid to do a micro-internship at no cost to the hosting company. So I want to clarify here. Again, every single micro-internship is paid. What I'm highlighting here is there are some programs where typically the company takes care of paying Parker Dewey, and then we're taking care of all that administrative stuff. That's why the pay is coming from Parker Dewey to you all. That's part of what makes it easy and appealing to the companies. They don't have to handle all that. So typically what happens is the company picks one of you, they pay us Parker Dewey, and then we take care of getting that payment to you. With some of these programs, what happens is there's a third party that for whatever reason has decided, you know what, I'm going to cover the cost of this project. So where that is beneficial to some of you is you can perhaps, if you're one of those qualifying students, and we'll talk about that here in a second, you can maybe say to a company, hey, you should engage me in a project. Not only am I going to get this done for you, but it's not going to cost you anything, company, but you, student or recent graduate, still get paid. So that's just one of the things we're going to cover today. To give you a little bit of a breakdown about what to expect for the rest of this session, our next step is going to be to understand those program opportunities. Now, many of you are probably not going to be eligible for these programs, and that is okay. Companies still love to engage students in micro-internships, even if they're the ones paying. It allows them to expand their pipeline. It allows them to engage all of you wonderful, talented folks. It allows them to get things done. So if you don't qualify for one of these programs, you definitely still can and should reach out to companies to encourage them to post a micro-internship for you. But for those of you who do qualify for these programs, it's just an extra little something in your arsenal when you're reaching out to these companies to say, hey, and it won't cost you anything. Then we're going to talk about how to reach out to companies of interest, how to find them, professional ways to word things. We're going to give you resources, and then we're going to do a brief reminder about some application best practices after they follow your advice and post that micro-internship. So understanding those opportunities that are available to you. I am going to launch a poll here, And this poll is going to talk about some of those programs that are currently available. So as I go through these programs, just encourage you to, if you qualify, make sure you indicate so in the chat. And for those of you who don't qualify, if you could go ahead and hit that none of the above, just so I know how many folks have taken the poll, that would be fantastic too. So high-level overview, while y'all are looking at that poll, we've got 3 programs here. One is the DeLuca program. If you are a student or a recent graduate of a Florida institution or a Connecticut institution, any HBCU, or select HSI. So to be clear, this is not all HSIs. This is HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions, that are members of the HSI Career Collaborative. So I'm going to put a link in the chat here so you can see if you are a member, or if your institution is a member. From this page, you'll scroll down a little bit and you can see these different schools that are part of this group. So if you are from any of these schools, please make sure you indicate that in the poll, and I'll make sure I cover the program that you are eligible for. Scooting back, the next program is the Kansas program. Now, this is just for public schools in Kansas, and current students. So if you are a current undergraduate student attending a public college or university in Kansas, from what I understand, there is a little bit of a 6-month like recent graduate wiggle room. So if you're just graduated, you could potentially do this too. So go ahead and indicate that in the chat. And then we have an Indiana Economic Development Corporation program. It's a mouthful. That's why we typically call it the IEDC program. But if you are at an Indiana institution, whether public or private, then please make sure you indicate that. Looks like over 3/4 of you have filled out that poll, so we will go ahead and scoot along. So I see we've got a fair number of folks in the room who do qualify for DeLuca. So I'm going to take a minute to talk a little bit more about this program and what it entails. So again, anybody who's a member of one of those HSI career collaborative schools or attends one of those member schools, any HBCU, and any student or recent graduate of a Florida or Connecticut institution, you can engage in these projects. And again, the benefit of this is the companies aren't the ones paying. There is a third party, the DeLuca Foundation, that's covering it. Now, only certain types of companies are eligible for this. Really, we're trying to highlight how these micro-internships are beneficial for companies as a recruiting tool. So for those folks who are trying to find that next great hire for their internship program or the next great hire for a full-time job, those are the folks that we want to be taking advantage of this program. So what it covers is companies with those types of hiring needs to be able to post a 15-hour project. You all, any student that gets selected for these projects, gets paid $300. And again, it costs the company nothing. So if you have a contact, or we're going to talk about ways to find contacts today during this webinar, you can reach out to them if you're from one of those types of schools and say, hey, I can do a 15-hour project for you. It's not going to cost you anything, but you, student, you still get paid $300 for completing it. This is available right now kind of until funding runs out, so moving quicker rather than slower is a good one if you're interested in highlighting this DeLuca program and you qualify. And again, I am keeping an eye on the chat, so if you have questions about any of these programs, please feel free to throw them out. Throw them out as then throw them into the chat, not throw them out. So next up, we have about 20% of you today. Hey, Kansas folks, who indicated you're eligible for the Kansas program. So there are slightly different numbers in terms of eligibility, whether you are at a community/technical college or a 4-year institution. But basically, this allows any employers in Kansas to be able to engage you in a project. These are scoped at about 20-25 hours, somewhere in that ballpark. You get paid $450, and the Kansas program is covering the cost. So again, a great opportunity for those of you who are in Kansas to say to Kansas employers, hey, let me tackle a project for you. You know how much it's going to cost you? Nothing. To the question in the chat, yes, you will have access to the deck. Everyone who registered is going to get these slides and recording afterwards. And let's see, did we have anyone? We don't have anyone in Indiana, so we're not going to bother talking about Indiana today. But for those who are checking out the recording later, if you're in Indiana, feel free to spend a little extra time on those slides. And again, if you are not eligible for a program, which is the majority of you, and that's usually the case, it's not a problem. Companies are happy to pay for micro internships because it's helping them achieve their goals. They want to reach you. They want to do it in a cost-effective way. Micro internships are perfect for doing that. Some companies just want some on-demand support. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth for a full semester. Again, engaging you in a micro internship is perfect. If they're trying to find the perfect hire for that next role, this is a great way to hire with confidence. So these are all just examples of different ways companies have used micro internships. When you check out these slides later, you're going to be able to, if it's of interest, click on these links. So the example here for Jessica was the company wanted to reach students that weren't previously aware of them. Well, check this out. This micro internship, the student found it on Parker Dewey. They'd never heard of this company before, but they said, I'm just looking to get some experience. They ended up offering her a full-time role, and she was like, well, yeah, this project was great. I'd never heard of you before, but let me do this. So that's just one example. In this case, you're going to be reaching out to them, so you're already familiar with this company, but it's still a win for them if they've been trying to reach students that, again, maybe aren't in their geographic area, maybe aren't already in their pipeline, maybe don't have time to jump right into a traditional internship or go to the career fair. So that's all just to say, even if you don't qualify for one of these programs, reach out to companies and do it with confidence because we're going to give you all the tools you need. So on the topic of reaching out to companies, I want to start this section with a statistic, and that is that 87%, that's like a B plus, y'all. That's the majority. 87% of employers fill internship slots informally, such as through outreach from a student. That is a big old number. And since it holds true for internships, it also makes sense that it would hold true for micro internships too. If you are proactive, if you reach out, if you share information about how they can use this professionally, there's no reason really for them to not take you up on this. So don't think, oh, nobody does this. No, this is the way the majority of people go about getting opportunities. So don't hold back. But to reach out, you need two things. The first thing you need is a contact, somebody to reach out to. The second thing you need is a message. So we're going to dig in first into how do you find contacts to reach out to? First option, maybe you already have someone in mind. If you're coming to this webinar, chances are you're interested in micro internships. You want to get that paid professional experience, but you're looking at the opportunities on the platform and they just don't align with your goals. Since you already have specific goals, you might already have a specific company in mind. So if you've already met someone at a company you'd love to do a micro internship with, this could be a recruiter you met at a career fair. It could be an alum or a mentor. It could be an existing LinkedIn connection you got from somewhere else. It could be someone you met at an event held by your career center or someone one of your professors introduced you to, maybe a class speaker. If they are working at a company where you want to do a project, where you would love to start building connections and experience, that can be a great contact to reach out to. Now, for those of you who are going, nope, I got nothing. I'm starting from scratch. I do encourage you to take a second thought on it. Usually you'll find out or realize, okay, I actually do have some people that would be great to reach out to. But if you genuinely, you're like, I got nobody, never fear. Again, we're going to cover how to find some contacts. Today, we're going to use two resources to do that. We're going to use LinkedIn and Handshake. LinkedIn, free to create a profile, very easy to use, and it's going to be a great professional tool for you for the rest of your career. Handshake tends to be very focused on early career talent. Even if your school is not a Handshake school, as long as you have a .edu email address, you should be able to get access. So as we talk about these, you're going to notice a lot of similarities between how the two work. You don't necessarily have to use both, but we're going to show you how to use both just so you can decide which you like best, whatever works easiest for you. Before we jump into that, though, I do want to give a quick kind of PSA that the first thing you should do before you start reaching out is making sure that your profile, whether you're using LinkedIn or Handshake, is up to date. So I have a resource here that kind of talks about some of the best practices for making sure that your profile is up to date. This is one example. If his goal is to do social medias for puppies who identify as French, fantastic profile photo. But if his goal is not that, then this is an example of something you might want to switch up. So it just really walks you through how to make sure your profile is putting out the energy that you want it to put out. So with that, we are now going to talk about how to find contacts at LinkedIn. This is the part of presentation where I really love for y'all to give me some input. So I'm going to put this link in the chat. And this is where you can start searching for companies. So this is just an example of one way we can go about it. Does everyone or anyone have a specific company, typically larger works better, but a specific company that you'd love to do a micro internship with and you have not seen posting on Parker Dewey already? All right, we've got a taker. So Altera Mountain Company. So what you can do is you can put this in, and if it's any kind of sizable company at all, usually it's going to pop up here. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And when the company record shows up, there are a couple different ways you could go about this. When you go to the company page, you can go right here to people, and you can see some of the folks that work there. So this can be an easy way. Sometimes the right people are just going to pop up, like Chief People Officer. That's probably someone that would be a good fit to reach out to. They sound like they make hiring decisions, would be interested in recruiting. So this is one way. Sometimes the people that pop up here may not be the folks that you're looking for. So you might go, this isn't exactly who I'm trying to hit. You know, I'm not seeing anyone with recruiting or HR or anyone in the type of department I'd be interested in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to show you a different way you could go about looking for folks. So I'm going to go, just putting in gobbledygook, and this time you can go to people. So I'm going to get rid in the URL of the gobbledygook I put in, and this is the link that you can go directly to search people. So what you can do here, and again, I'm just showing you a different way to go about this, is you can go to current company, and we're going to put in that same company, the Altera Mountain Company. And what this is going to do is show you everyone that currently works there. So some of those folks are going to be the same folks that you saw in that other place, but you're also going to have a lot more that you can see here. And these filters give you some more room to play. So what you can do is use these in a couple of different ways. So for example, if you are trying to find someone, maybe you already have an in with because you have the same alma mater. So let's say this is just an example, and since all of these are live, sometimes they're not going to show things right away, but this is just an example. Maybe you go to Colorado State University and you're like, well, show me, is there anyone else that graduated from there that works at this company? And you can use those filters to figure that out. So you can see a lot of folks who work at that company came from that alma mater. Maybe you're not having success with that, so you can ditch that effort. Maybe you just want to find someone who works in recruiting. So this is another example. Sometimes the first thing that you put in isn't going to work. So the first thing I'm going to try in this recruiting or this title section is to see, does anybody work there that's a recruiter, that's their title? Now in this case, we got a lot of different, well, we got 4, but we got different results. Sometimes you're going to put in recruiter and you're not going to get anything. Some other things that you might try are putting in the word talent. A lot of folks that are able to make these types of decisions might have the title of talent acquisition or talent engagement, those types of things. So I would recommend maybe trying recruiter first. If that doesn't work, try talent. If you're trying to engage a rather small company, sometimes they aren't going to have folks in those departments. It really depends on what you're trying to reach out to. In that case, in that title field, what you might try to do is put the kind of title you're interested in. So if you want to be a graphic designer, you're looking to do a graphic design project, I have no idea if this company does this, but you could put in that kind of title. They do this, and you can see the folks that work there that have that title. So if they don't have a recruiting department or an HR department, you can try reaching out to folks who are in the roles you eventually want to be in and seeing if they need help with a project. So I'm going to go back to our recruiter example. Before I do, actually, I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And when you do that recruiting example, I want to have you pay attention to some things here. And that is these little numbers right here next to each of these folks. So you see this little third. What that means is it's like a game of telephone. I know somebody that knows somebody that knows this person. So it's kind of telling you how many degrees separated you are. So you see this second, that means I know somebody who knows this person. In reality, I think I took that first know somebody who knows somebody a little bit too far. I think it should have been one less. But this means I know someone who knows this person. Sometimes you might see a first, which means you know that person. So that's an example of why it is so important for you to connect right now with your peers and your faculty and any of these folks you're meeting at career fairs on LinkedIn, because they can potentially help you get introductions to folks. So let's say, I want to see, who do I know that Lauren knows? I can go to Lauren's profile and I can kind of take a look at our mutual connections. Usually, they might have switched a little bit around here. Um, they switched this around, so it's a little bit harder to see the mutual connections. You know what? We're going to learn live. How did they switch this? How to see mutual connections on LinkedIn. All right. LinkedIn will usually display the number of shared connections. So this may be someone that has adjusted that setting on their end. So that's an example. Sometimes what you're hoping to do may not work. You may not be able to reach out to someone and say, hey, could you introduce me? But go to their profile just in case. So the next thing we're going to talk about, we found someone that you're interested in reaching out to that may be a good fit. So let's say you decide you just want to start with the recruiter person. You could also look at their location. So if one of their locations is actually where you are or where you want to be, you could use that. You could also use that as a filter. So let's say you wanted to be at the Colorado location. You can make that adjustment. If nobody shows up with that recruiter tag in the Colorado location, you can adjust what titles you're looking for. So just keep playing with it until you're seeing someone where you're like, that person looks like they can make a decision to help me potentially get an opportunity. So let's say we are interested in seeing if Lauren is that person. We're going to go to their profile first. It's always good just to take a little bit of a look at what they have been doing, what they currently do. Sometimes they'll have a description. So let's say in Lauren's description, if it said, I focus purely on recruiting executive level talent, well, most of you in the room are career launchers. I would assume all of you in the room are career launchers, not quite at that executive level. So if that were the case, what we would do is say, I'm going to go back. I'm going to see if there's somebody else that maybe focuses on early career talent or doesn't have that clarification. Now, in Lauren's case, we don't see anything that says, executive only or anything along those lines. So it's worth a try to reach out. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to hit the connect button. And this is where you always, always, always want to add a note. Now with LinkedIn, you are limited for a period of time. You can only do 5 notes and then it has to wait for a little bit and recycle. So use these intentionally. When you go to connect, always make sure you add a note. So you can see I only have 2 personalized invitations remaining for this month. So you'll want to pick 5 that you're really focused on, that you're really excited about, and use that wisely. You'll also notice when you're reaching out on LinkedIn for the first time, you have a 200 character limit. That is not a lot of space, and that is why we have decided to help you with some templates. So what I'm going through now is just looking at the slides, the things we've covered so far, so I can get to my messaging templates. So I'm going to go ahead and put this resource in the chat. To the person who's late, no worries. This is all being recorded. You're going to get the slides and recording afterwards. So these in the chat are your templates for reaching out. So this is where what we talked about earlier, those programs that you may qualify for, this is where they come into play. So your version of reaching out is going to look a little bit different if you're eligible for the DeLuca program versus the Kansas program, or if you're not eligible for any of them. Since the majority of the folks in the room today were not eligible for any of those programs, we're going to focus on the templates that are none of the above. But if you are following along live and you are eligible for DeLuca or Kansas, I know nobody in the room today was Indiana focused, then click on one of those. You're going to see very similar things, but tailored for what you are able to highlight. I see the question, what if you're doing a second bachelor's? Yes, you can do micro-internships to help you with that career journey too. So clicking on none of the above, what we have here is a LinkedIn template or a template that is going to fit in that space. So you can see it is very quick and easy for you to take and paste in, and we have set it so it is going to be under that character limit. But make sure you customize the templates. So in this case, it's Altera Mountain Company. Then you let them know a little bit about you. So let's say, I'm not sure what the major of the person who suggested it is. Let's say sustainability, just as an example. And then it gives them a link, and that's going to take them to this page right here. So they can understand how to go ahead and get started with this. So very short, very sweet, very to the point. Now you'll notice here, we've used 194 characters out of 200. Sometimes the name of the company or your major might be long enough that it's going to carry you over. In that case, you might want to consider doing some abbreviations. Not ideal, but if you're really stuck for space, you could say your company instead of naming the company. But to make sure it's personalized, to make sure it's clear you are intentionally reaching out to them, we recommend if at all possible, as long as you've got the space, to put in the name of that company. I see a question. Is this strictly for undergraduates? No. Micro-internships can be used for students who are pursuing associate's degrees, undergraduate, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. We've even seen micro-interns who are getting their doctoral degrees. So that's why, especially if you are a master's student, this is a great webinar for you to attend. Some of the projects you're currently seeing may not be directly aligned with the specific skills that you are studying in a master's program. So this is a great way to reach out to folks who have needs in those areas and encourage them to post a project for you. Again, folks, and some of you are taking great advantage of it. I am keeping an eye on that chat. So if you have any questions along the way, happy to answer those. So with LinkedIn, what we have covered so far, just to recap, is how to find contacts at a specific company of interest. And we went about doing that in two ways. First, we looked at the company and then we looked at the people who work there. You might get lucky and find someone who's a good fit right off the bat. The other way we went about it was looking at the people filter and then filtering by people who currently work at that company. So that works out really well if you already have a specific company of interest that you would love to work for. So I saw I had another example in here with the Baptist Health South Florida. So I'll just do another quick example here to show that it works in different areas. If you go back to looking for people, in LinkedIn, I'm sure there's an easier way to go about this, but I usually just put in gobbledygook, go to people, and then clear in the URL everything after the question mark. If someone knows an easier way to get from the home page to where you're searching for people, please share it with me. But from this, again, we're going to go to all filters. We're going to go to current company, and we're going to add what was thrown out, that Baptist Health South Florida. Now, sometimes you'll have things like this where you'll see a few different options. So there's a foundation, there's a credit union, there's specifically an endoscopy center. I'm not sure exactly what aligns with your goals, but if you're not sure, you might Google each of these options to try and figure out. And for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and just click the foundation. So we'll just see first who comes up. So a lot of these, are folks who work in healthcare, some folks who have not kept their LinkedIns up to date, but then we see here an HR coordinator. This is probably going to be a decent person, HR talent acquisition coordinator. They work there full time. They are currently still there, which obviously we set the filter that way, but this is someone you could definitely reach out to. And, you want to take whatever clues you can from someone's LinkedIn profile. They've indicated that they're open to work. Now, this could mean a couple of different things. Maybe being in the recruiting space, they're testing out different elements of what LinkedIn offers to folks who are open to work. That's something that folks do. It makes sense. Or they could be saying, this has been a good for part of my career journey. I'm ready to move on to the next thing. But either way, that means they're probably ready to be candid with you about what the opportunities are or if they'd be able to do this. So this could be a good person to reach out to. All right. Now, some of you may be thinking, okay, that's great for folks who know what company they want to do a micro internship with. but I don't know. And that's okay too. Some of you may just be thinking, I know what type of project I want to do. I know what industry I want to work in, or I know where I want to make connections, but I don't have a specific company in mind. So the next thing we're going to talk about here is how to identify companies that meet your needs. So again, we're going to go back to this company page, and I'm going to put this link in the chat again. And this is another opportunity where I am looking for engagement. So who has like a dream industry? You're like, I don't know a company specifically, but I want to work in XYZ kind of industry. Or does everyone here today have very specific career goals? Okay, so auditing. So if I remember correctly, that's accounting. This is a great example because sometimes if what you're looking to get into is really, really specific, they may not be filters set up for it. So we'll first try exactly what you put in. Nope, not that link. We'll put in auditing as the industry and see what comes up. Okay, so this is a perfect example. When you put in audit, that's obviously not what you're looking for. But if I'm remembering correctly, and auditing is really a part of accounting, this is where you may play a little bit and have to come up with something that both speaks to your goals, but is in one of those preset filters. We can also get even more specific with this. So Chris, if you're like, you know what, I'm open to anywhere, this could be great. We could start here. But what I haven't done, folks, is I haven't cleared that gobbledygook I put in earlier. Bear with me. There we go. So industry, let me make sure that, yep, accounting. There we go. Now we see a lot more. Before it was just showing us that had those letters that I had kind of put in there. So now we're seeing a ton of companies that are in the industry of accounting that have those types of needs. So we've already established you have 5 reach outs a month. You're not going to be able to reach out to all 475,000. So we want to get a little bit more specific. Chris, do you have any idea about, what size of company you're interested in or any particular locations where you'd like to work? While Chris is thinking about that, I'm going to share another resource you have here at your disposal with filters. We talked about what those little connection numbers mean before. So if you are looking for folks where you have first connection, so you know people that work there, you can actually set this filter and it's going to show you if you know people that work at that place. So in my case, now I'm not in the accounting industry, so it makes sense that this would not be an overwhelming result. I can see for these Saltmarsh advisors, they're in the accounting industry, and I have one connection that works here. So you can click on that link and it's going to show you who that person is. So they are working in talent development, strategic planning. So this could be someone that I would reach out to that I may not have remembered. Oh yeah, I already have a connection there. So that would be a perfect use of that filter. While I was talking about that, Chris got me an answer. So I'm going to go back here, take away that filter, and we're going to say we are looking at the Chicago area. So I'm going to go ahead up to locations. I'm going to put in Chicago. And there are a bunch of different ways you could go about this, especially if you're looking at a big metropolitan area. So we'll start with greater Chicago area, but you can play with that a little bit too if you're not seeing the results you're looking for right off the bat. So we are now seeing accounting firms in the Chicago area. I know you said big 4, so we're going to go back here. And the big 4 are the big boys. They tend to have lots of employees. So let's look at the really big companies. And this is where we're going to start to see, I don't think none of these are the big 4. We're not seeing the Deloittes and the EY, but the big 4, they're not hard to find. If you already know the big 4, you can go directly to their pages. But this is also going to give you some additional options that you may not have considered before. And then from here, you're going to do the same kind of thing that we were talking about. So you'll be able to go check out the company. You could see, is this a company that I would actually be interested in? Is this a company that I would perhaps want to reach out to? And then you can do what we were doing before, where you are looking for people, but you filter by this company and take all those steps that we took previously. So hopefully this is helpful in understanding how you can find companies in your particular areas of interest and then take those steps to find contacts to reach out to. So let's just, take this example one step further. Let's say Well, let's look at BDO. I'm not familiar with them, but that doesn't mean anything because again, this isn't my industry. So you can read a little bit about them. Culture is their first order of success. You can read about the different things they do. You can see some of their posts. Oh, good for them. They were 2025 honoree of the Civic 50. So as you're looking at their profile, if you're going, okay, I see some things that are appealing to me, this is where we're going to take the name of that company and we're now going to switch gears again and we're going to look for people. So going over to people. We are going to go back to our filters. We are going to put that company in the filter. Now, since they are such a large company, they probably have a lot of different locations. So we are going to filter again by our greater Chicago area. And then since they are a big company, they're probably going to have folks that have recruiter in their title. So we're going to start there. And there we go. Campus recruiter. That is a perfect person to reach out to. In my case, I also happen to have a mutual connection. And this is where we take our templates and we reach out. Any questions about this process, please feel free to put those in the chat. But just a recap while I'm waiting for any questions of what we've covered, we figured out if you already have a specific company in mind, how you can start there to find contacts to reach out to. We've covered our template so you can reach out with something that is going to fit within that LinkedIn space. And we have covered, if you don't have a specific company in mind, how you can use LinkedIn to search for companies that are going to align with your interests and goals, whether that be location, size of company, industry, all that good stuff. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to do these things on Handshake. You're going to notice that it is very similar to the way that you do this on LinkedIn. So if you do not already have Handshake, or if you haven't already created an account, here is, I'm going to put it in the chat, the link to get started. And again, this is very similar to LinkedIn. It's just more focused on early career talent. So you're just maybe a little bit more likely to find employers that are specifically looking for folks that are in college or graduating from college. So when it comes to Handshake, what you're going to do is you're going to start over at this Employers tab. And this is where you are going to find that it's very similar to LinkedIn. So if you already have an employer that you are specifically interested in, so I know Chris mentioned, I'm looking for the Big Four. So let's say you want to get someone at Deloitte to post a micro-internship for you. Now, Deloitte is going to have multiple accounts because they are such a big company. So what we can do here is a couple of different things. We can see if their name is perhaps called Deloitte Chicago in that particular area. And that doesn't look like it's given us the results we've got. So we're going to get rid of that. And then we can use this filter right here to say, okay, I want Deloitte, but I want Deloitte in Chicago and see what it brings up. Now, sometimes, like what we're seeing here, a company may not have a Handshake account for every single location. That totally makes sense. What you can do then is go ahead and clear that location back, and you're just going to go to the main one. So we're going to open this up, and there are a few places that you might be able to find contacts. So down here, there's a people section. So you can see they've got plenty of campus recruiters. A lot of times for the big companies they're going to. Other companies might have up in their contact information, they might have a contact and there might be a more general email, but we've got folks right here we can reach out to. Now, a nice feature of Handshake is it also tells you how active folks are. Sometimes somebody may have moved on from a company, if it says they haven't been active in 3 years, that's not going to be your best bet. But in this case, Paloma is a campus recruiter. She's been active very recently, and they've got an overall Deloitte campus recruiting. So I would say both of these, because we're not limited like we were on LinkedIn, both of these might be good folks to reach out to. So what you can do is you can click on that person and you can go ahead and send them a message. And this is where we're going to go back again to our templates. Since we're not on LinkedIn anymore, we don't have those messaging limits. So we're going to use this that has a little bit more information in it because we are not as limited. So I'm going to grab my template and I'm going to bring it over here. And this is where you got to make sure that you update it. So if you're nervous about accidentally hitting that button too early, you could put it into a Google Doc and change it there. But we're going to update. Hello, Paloma. Now, if you are finding this person like we just did, you've never met them before, then you don't need this first sentence. This is just if you're reaching out to someone you've already met. So you can say, I'm a junior studying accounting at, your institution. You all get the idea for customizing. I'm reaching out because I would love to do an auditing internship with your company, with Deloitte, and then let them know. A lot of you said, I'm not in the right geographic area, or maybe you weren't selected for this round, or, whatever it may be. Then you can say if you're interested. Oop, I deleted a little too much. So then, there we go. After you clarify why you're struggling to engage already, say, hey, I was wondering if you would post a micro-internship. They're paid, deadline-driven, typically remote. It would allow me to make a meaningful contribution to Deloitte in a way that's accessible for me and easy for you, and it lets them know where they can learn more and get started with posting your project for you. If they already have a project, you're also giving them a place where they can jump right in to get started, and then asking them, if you do this, let me know right away because I am going to have that application in, and then you send that to the contact. Very similar again to LinkedIn. When we're looking at this employers tab, we've seen how you could search for someone specific, but we also have all these filters that you can use. So if you want to filter by location, by industry, by employer size, you can start that way if you're not sure what companies you're interested in. All right. You were asking for the examples of the writing. For sure, these templates are right here. So I'm going to send you to the top of this resource. And then you can decide whether you are a DeLuca eligible student. So again, that's any Florida or Connecticut students, HBCU students, or students from select HSI institutions. Use those templates because the difference is you can highlight, hey, this is absolutely free for you if you qualify for those programs. But again, if you don't qualify for those programs, just use the none of the above and you're still got a good shot of getting a response. All right. If there are any questions about how to do this with Handshake, please feel free to put those in the chat. We've talked about how you can filter for different types of companies. We talked about how you can look for the public staff, or this contact information is what it might look like. Sometimes they may not have staff listed. So those are a couple different ways you can go about reaching out. There are some SUNY schools that qualify for DeLuca and some that do not. If you are at a SUNY school that is an HBCU, then you would qualify. Albany, it depends on if it's an HBCU. I do not know off the top of my head. All right, we've talked about how to reach out on Handshake. And some of you may be wondering, like, isn't this a Parker Dewey webinar? Why are you not encouraging me to reach out on Parker Dewey? And the reason is, one, our platform's not set up for that, but it is intentionally kind of set up that way. We want to make sure that once a micro internship is posted, it's an equitable process. So we want to make sure that the entire application is taking place on the Parker Dewey platform. Once you get selected, that communication goes off platform and you're working away on your project. But we just want to make sure when something is posted that everyone is getting equal access to it. So that's why we don't have the opportunity for you to message companies unless they have messaged you about your application first. But in this case, since you're taking the initiative, you're reaching out, you are already showing a lot of skills that are in demand with employers. You're showing initiative, you're showing communication, you are showing that you've got the gumption to really reach out and create your own opportunities. So if you're reaching out and they're learning about micro internships from you and they post an opportunity, chances are they're doing it with you in mind. So make sure you jump on applying for that project. Also want to take a quick minute to talk about the importance of following up. Oh, we've got a question though. So Christopher is saying messaging folks typically makes it more likely that you're going to get hired. Also, do you message only one person or all of them? Ooh, this is a really good question. So if you are applying for a full-time job or a traditional internship or something like that, if you're able to find connections in LinkedIn and reach out about that opportunity, that can often be a good strategy to help you stand out. Again, with Parker Dewey, we don't want you to do that for opportunities that are already posted, just because we want to make sure the process is equitable. And the other reason is safety. As long as the communication before you're selected is taking place on the platform, we can make sure everything's on the up and up. They're not asking for anything inappropriate. Again, we're the employer of record, so they don't need any confidential information from you. So just doing all that on Parker Dewey before the kickoff helps us protect you. But when you're applying for other opportunities, that can be a good strategy to find a contact, to reach out, to kind of see if you could connect and ask a little bit more about the role. To your question about, do you message only one person or all of them? I would recommend starting with one. Pick whoever seems to be the best alignment, and there could be a couple of different factors that you take into consideration. One could be where they went to school. Did they graduate from your alma mater? You already have something in common, reach out to that person. Another might be title. If you see someone who has got the title of recruiter versus someone who has the title of campus recruiter, well, campus recruiter is going to be specifically focused on early career talent. So that's going to be the person that you're probably going to want to reach out to. Now, if you have not heard from someone in a week or a couple of weeks, that is where the importance of following up comes in. Sometimes if you're really particularly excited about one company, and you're like, I don't want to, spend more time waiting, you might decide at that point, if there are multiple contacts, to try reaching out to a second one when you follow up with the first one. I see a question. How close to the start date do companies typically choose a candidate? Usually they will select by that start date, but sometimes their goals just don't end up coming into fruition. It could be that other priorities ended up taking place a little bit and it's just pushed back a couple days. Or it could be that they haven't gotten a candidate they're excited about yet. As long as you can see a micro internship, even if the start date is a few days in the past, that means it's available. That means they're still accepting applications, and it means it's still worth your time to apply to. So when it comes to following up, we also have resources for each of these categories to help you do that. Now, on LinkedIn, unfortunately, unless they accept your request, you're not going to be able to follow up. That's just the way LinkedIn is set up. It's a protection, just like you would want to use it too. You wouldn't want someone to be able to message you repeatedly. So you can send that first message when you request to connect, but you can't continue messaging unless they accept your request. But let's say that they do accept your request, but maybe haven't had the time to connect yet. You no longer have that character limit. So we have a little bit of a longer template for you here so you can explain more of your interest, give them more actionable next steps, and let them know some resources so they can get going on this to create a project for you. Over here on the longer email template, we've also got a longer email follow-up. So if you haven't heard from whoever you reached out to in a week, whether that's someone you emailed or someone you messaged on Handshake or wherever it may be that's outside of LinkedIn, we've got a template here so you can follow up and just say, hey, I want to make sure you got my message. I'm really excited about this. And again, giving them the resources to post that project for you. I see another question. Are the opportunities on the Parker Dewey portal available to everyone? Companies do have the ability to feature projects to specific schools when they post. So let's say you reach out to this company and you say, hey, I'm a SUNY, whatever institution student. I'd love for you to post this project for me. If they have you in mind when they're posting, they can make that project exclusively available to students from your institution. So they can feature that. And some companies are probably going to choose to do that. Again, since you're reaching out to them and likelihood they're posting the project specifically for you, they won't want to waste everyone else's time to have them apply. So they might decide, I'm going to make this project just to students from that school because I know I want that student to let me know about this. Could companies see follow-up as a bad thing sometimes because you've heard that it could be, seen as bothering them or come off as demanding? This is a fantastic question, and it's exactly why when it comes to projects who are already posted on Parker Dewey, we don't want you trying to reach out to the company outside of the project. So again, the differentiation there is if it's already on Parker Dewey, just make sure you follow the application process. If you're reaching out to someone before they've posted, that's where you want to use all these resources. And following up is a tricky thing professionally because you don't want to be seen as annoying. And that's why we've kind of given you these templates and these guidelines. If you send them an email and you don't hear back from them in a day and you send this follow up, that's going to be seen as pushy. If it's been a week though, and you send this one polite follow up, that's professional. So that's where some of those nuances come into play. Giving them time to make sure they've seen and responded, being kind in your follow up, Don't just say, hey, did you see my email? Say, hey, I want to make sure you saw it, and here is some more information. So tone plays a big piece. And then if you follow up this one time and they still don't respond, unfortunately, that is the point. Sometimes you won't get a response, and that's where you just let it go to make sure you don't cross that line from professional and taking initiative to overstepping and being annoying. But it's a great question. I see someone saying that they have applied on Parker Dewey before, but they haven't gotten selected. So a few quick tips. One is to log in regularly. We see that those who get selected for micro-internships on average are logging in about twice as often as those who have not been selected. And part of the reason why that's big is because micro-internships move very quickly. Most projects make selections within about a week of posting the project. So if you're only logging in, once every other week, there are projects that will have been posted and made selections in that time that you never even saw. The other is to apply regularly. So we have seen that those who apply to 5 or more projects are about 3 times as likely to get selected as those who apply for less than 5. So make sure you're applying consistently. And then the third thing is really making sure the projects you're applying for are a good fit for your skills and goals. So that's where a lot of the purpose of today's webinar comes in. If you're not seeing projects that align with your skills and career goals, I encourage you to use those resources that we've covered today to take initiative and create more opportunities for yourself. All right. We also do have regularly scheduled resources. If you want to come to some of our office hours, we have resources there to help you review your profile. So for Hudson and Maria, I would strongly recommend coming to those office hours so we can take a look at your profile. Make sure you're putting your best foot forward, all those other things to really increase your likelihood of selection. I know you're saying you struggled to gain a single selection. Oops, one second. So I'm unclear on whether you were applying for projects that were already posted or if you were using the resources in this webinar to reach out and create new ones. So please feel free to follow up and we can look into the resources to help you make sure that we're following these guidelines, reaching out and doing the best opportunities to reach out. So I'm going to go ahead. For those of you who are saying you struggled, I would love for you to reach out. There's my email address. Let me know which companies you reached out to. Let me know if you used the templates and let me know if you got a response because I'm a little unclear as to whether you were using the resources from this webinar or if you were applying to projects already on the platform. So I'm excited to look into those. And just a quick reminder too, once you've taken all these other steps, make sure you don't wait to apply to the resulting micro-internships. They're going to move quickly. They probably have you in mind since you reached out to them, but you still don't want to sleep on it. Make sure you're submitting a quality application. And since you took the initiative to reach out first, in this case, it's okay to reach out to them to let them know that you applied. So a quick note of caution here, even if you're taking the initiative and you're reaching out and they do end up posting, if you apply without a complete profile, or if you apply with application responses to the questions that are not thoughtful, even though you were the one that took the initiative, that's going to make it hard for the person to justify selecting you. So a lot of times what we're seeing, if folks have taken the initiative, a project was posted, if they're still not getting selected, there might be something about that profile or those responses that could be maybe a little bit more compelling. So that's again where we have those office hours to support. So with the time we have left, coming full circle to some of these folks who are expressing their struggles before, the folks who said, I can't afford to do something unpaid, or I can't figure out what my first step is going to be, or any of those other things, using micro-internships really helped them address those challenges. So at this point, folks, if you haven't already, make sure that your Parker Dewey profile is set up because you want to make sure if you're reaching out and they take that next step that you are ready to apply. Make sure that profile is complete. Again, making use of all those pieces, adding a personal statement, a photo, uploading a resume, even if there's not a lot on it yet. All those things really play a significant role in you getting selected. Use those strategies and templates we reviewed today to reach out to companies of interest, create more opportunities that align with your goals, and again, apply to those projects right away. The slides and the recording will be going out to everyone afterwards, so you'll also see the link. We recommend following our Parker Dewey Career Launchers page on LinkedIn too. All right. So with that, folks, we will stick around a little bit if there are any questions, but just want to thank you so much for your time today and for joining us. I hope that this was helpful, and I look forward to writing success stories about some of you very soon.